Being on the road is about finding better questions, not necessarily better answers. You are experiencing new things, seeing new perspective, meeting new people, and don't rush to find the answers that you think that you need, but be open to new questions that arise. If you're okay with that, then digital nomad life is excellent for that. For too long, we've been led to believe that only two types of people can have an extraordinary creative career: creative genius and people who hustle so hard that they're working all the time. Here on the Everyday Talent Podcast, we are shattering that myth. This podcast is built on one truth, which is every one of us can have an extraordinary creative career. The way to get there is not by sacrificing all of ourselves to our work, but rather embracing our authentic selves and carve out unique paths to a fulfilling and joyful creative life. Hello and welcome. My name is Betty. I'm a creative and a coach for creators. I've coached photographers, filmmakers, visual artists, arts consultants, and arts leaders to make intentional career shifts and build thriving independent practices. This podcast is for you if you're looking to cut through the noise of what you should be doing in your creative career and figure out what actually works and matters for you. Before we begin, I want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your platform of choice. Leave us a rating and review and share this podcast on your social so that more amazing creatives out there can find out about this podcast and feel seen. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Talent Podcast. Betty here from Taipei. Yep, I'm still in Taipei, as you heard on the last episode. I very much consider what we're going to talk about today as an extension from the last episode, and I'll tell you how I got to here after recording the last episode, and I share on Instagram story that hey, I recorded an episode telling you about like how has it been being a digital nomad. I did a little survey of people's interests in terms of the topics of like around digital nomad or becoming digital nomad or working abroad, working remotely. And there was quite a bit of interest on this topic in terms of like, okay, what do you need to consider? What factors do you need to consider before you take on the digital nomad life? Because I think one of the silver lining coming out from the pandemic is that people realize that working abroad or working remotely is possible, whether you're thinking about doing that in a short, intense chunk, maybe a month or 2 months, or you're thinking to do that like for extended period, is come in discussion certainly a lot in last year in conversation even with friends or clients. So I can see why this is something that is on your mind. And I'm definitely an open book and I want to share with you what I've distilled as the three major factors to consider before you take on a digital nomad life. And I would just say this, whether I will share one moment from my own experience that I know this is definitely in our subconscious or consciousness to consider an alternative life of living. And perhaps that will even be the big theme as we go on or in this podcast to share more about what creative work and creative career look like in this time and age. Because I did this trip going back to Vancouver before we traveled to Asia. And for some of you might know, I went to high school in Vancouver and I still have high school friends there that are very close to me. And my husband also has extended family there. And so we have a lot of connections there that are, we consider our close group of friends and family. And going back there, seeing the place that I grew up essentially, and naturally had a lot of conversations with people who are close to me about their life, where they are at, choices they're making, choices they're considering to make. I think there is more and more thinking around how to have a quality life while having purposeful work. And I definitely mentioned that also in the last episode. So if you're thinking about, okay, I'm not satisfied with this current mode of working. Perhaps stepping away would be able to give me some insights. I just want to validate you. You're not crazy. And it's completely okay to think that direction. And I know part of you, if you're in that spot, might wonder, is the grass always greener? That's what we are going to dive in today. And I'm going to give you some of my own sharing from what I've experienced in the past month. I definitely don't pretend to know everything about the digital nomad life. I haven't done it that long. It's only been a month. But I think wearing my coach hat and in the past month, I'm constantly thinking, okay, if my client wants to do this, what would I advise them to do? That's how I wrote this episode. And this is the positioning that I'm coming from, almost as a trusted friend. Yeah, why don't you take that perspective? So hopefully this will give you some key factors that you consider. And I would say for some of these, they're both practical and mindset related. And some of this is, I think, are things that I did not consider even on a practical or mindset level before I packed my bags and came here. So without further ado, let's dive in. One disclaimer: if you're interested in like how am I actually working now in terms of my day-to-day, how much I'm working, how was I able to communicate to my clients and projects, how I would work in this format, those will not be covered in this episode. I encourage you to go back one episode to listen to that episode on, so how has it been working and living as a digital nomad. I cover quite extensively about my day to day and the boundaries that I set in that episode. This episode, again, is really about if you're thinking forward and want to have a set of factors to consider before you decide to take on digital nomad life. Okay, so let's dive in. Number one, don't expect that digital nomad life is going to solve all your career, business, and creative problems. Dun 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 dun. We'll talk here right away. And so I guess this is probably intuitive. And the part of you who are like, I knew it. Grass is not always greener. It's coming out to like and scream really loud. I just want to say that this is actually not meant to discourage you in any way if you're considering the digital nomad life. So, in fact, maybe a good reframing of that insight that I just shared is that don't expect that the digital nomad life is going to solve all your problems in a very linear way. Think about it. If you're considering to change your setting and environment and the culture that you're in by traveling abroad, you should embrace a different set of values and be open that your own perspective is going to be stretched. However, when we envision going away and trying a new environment, we often envision things to work out very linearly without us feeling any kind of discomfort. Let me give you a concrete example in my case. So, one of my imagination or one of my expectation coming to this trip was that I would be more creative in writing or I would be more creative in painting. For the last little while in 2023, I would say maybe the last quarter, I got quite busy with some projects and also I got married, quite busy. And I was not writing and painting very much at all. And I felt a sense of fatigue and also disconnect with the mediums I often practice. And a big great news came to me at the end of 2023. I got approved for a grant that I applied to write a feature script. Yeah, yay! I am going to write a feature script. How exciting! So before I took the flight to fly to Asia, I had all this romantic envisioning of like how I would write when I was abroad. I would write from the hotel room, I would write from the coffee shop. I would always like be writing. I would be writing. I'd be so free. See, that's a very good case or example of I just expected nothing else would change other than one problem in my creative life would get improved in a very linear fashion. So let me tell you what have actually happened. I have not started writing my script. In fact, 2 days ago, I had written a very honest email with my script consultant that you probably won't meet until I come back. I have not been able to find that space to just write very productively and output. Like I have a outline of the script already, but to write those scenes out, I've not really found the mental space, the temporal space, or the physical space. Even though yes, there's cafes and hotels that I've seen. I've also not been painting very much. Again, that requires like an extended amount of chunk of time in my day. That if you listen to the last episode, you realize that my days are completely structured differently. However, here's what I found. I have found a new way of reconnecting with my writing. How did that happen? I went to a free writing workshop that my very dear friend and also writer has hosted. And I've always known the method of free writing, but during that workshop, we were not using free writing for creative writing per se. We were using free writing for this documenting whatever has emerged at the beginning of the year. And I said, wow, this is essentially creative journaling, which is really awesome because I have had accumulated a lot of thoughts and even implicit encounters with myself and my inner voice as I travel so much. And I haven't gotten the chance to put those in words. So I got my notebook, my pen, and at that workshop, it was very clear. Like the instruction was really clear. We could not use the iPad, laptop. It has to be from head to mind to hand. So writing on piece of paper. And again, I had used the method of rewriting before, but that day it just clicked in my mind. I was like, aha, that's the kind of writing I want to do right now in this phase in my life. And after I had a very therapeutic session during the workshop, and after that day, I've been writing almost twice a day on my notebook. And I let go of the expectation that this was going to lead to anywhere or anything productive. And because if you heard the last episode, you know that I don't work many hours now, that many hours, and I don't have meetings during my daytime because that would be my client's nighttime usually. I do have that space that to write whatever I want. I just don't have the mental space because I need to gear up, or the energy space because I need to gear up to work. But I can write things that's about my daily occurring, right? So I've been practicing free writing. It's been going great. And in process, one unexpected outcome that came out is I found not only did I learn some insights about new perspective about what's going to happen about the business, my life, but also I found a new way of connecting creatively to the medium of writing. And also, I realized as I was writing my creative reflection, some of this can really be shared to my audience on my e-news, which I've also been thinking how to renovate. Essentially, that's how I think about it. Renovate my e-news because for a while now, I feel like the content there is not clicking as much as it is on the podcast. So it led to me writing a very sincere letter to all my followers on my e-news. If you follow me on my e-news, you would know that I had written about an existential crisis that I experienced at the beginning of the year. And leading up to that, an invitation to ask the audience whether they want to continue to hear from me about my travel reflection or whether they want to hear from me from a more structured way. Anyway, I felt so proud that I wrote that email to my e-news followers, and essentially what it allowed me to do is a different way of thinking about my writing, even for business usage. And all of this are unexpected outcome. I did not think that it was going to travel was going to take care of these specific problems that I had. I had imagined that it would take care of some other things. So Don't expect the digital nomad life, travel, changing your lifestyle is going to take care of all your problems. And I mean that as in, it might not be working as straightforward as you imagine. Because when you're traveling, you're adapting on a daily level. And from there, one insight that I might want to give to you, or one grounding mantra, is that on the road, it's about finding better questions, not necessarily better answers. Let me repeat that. Being on the road is about finding better questions, not necessarily better answers. You are experiencing new things, seeing new perspective, meeting new people, and don't rush to find the answers that you think that you need, but be open to new questions that arise. If you're okay with that, then digital nomad life is excellent for that. But if your expectation for the digital nomad life is going to take care of this and take care of this, and I've got that line to hit, digital nomad life is certainly probably not going to be that antidote to whatever bottleneck that you are experiencing. Moving on to the second factor to consider, find your home even when you are on the road. This is almost sounds like an oxymoron, or like, like, what? You're on the road. What do you mean find your home? I want to desire a free, no, like the word nomad suggests like you're not home. So this is what I said like as a hint at the beginning that I did not expect is, but it's both practical and very mindset related. So when we mentioned about the digital nomad life, or even when in my experience when I shared that I was going to do that with other people, usually people's most like common response is like, "You're going to have such an adventure." I think that word itself indicates what we think about digital nomad life, which is it's going to be fun, adventurous. Even now, like sometimes I go online and people are like, "You're still in the same Airbnb for like how long? Like for the past like 3, 4 weeks?" I said, "Yeah, and I will be here for another 3, 4 weeks." And they go, "Well, shouldn't you be doing some, you know, moving around, traveling?" I said, I do some of that, but I'd like to have a home base. And that decision to have a home base and balance it with the amount of traveling that we are doing has become one of the best decisions that we make before and since we gone on to this digital nomad lifestyle. Because when you're abroad, you're dealing with again so many new experiences, meeting new people, new stimuli, new routine. You have you have to constantly define and also reinforce your boundaries with your clients that are back home. The last thing you need is you're moving every single day. Of course, there's a little bit of an inflation, like, even if you're traveling to different city every 2, 3 days, you might be only moving like, every so often. But I can't help but to stress the importance of finding your home or maybe building a home base when you're here. And by that, I mean a couple of different things. One, find a neighborhood that you can see alive around that. To give you a real example again, right now we are situated, like, so my husband and I knew that a big chunk of our travel, we're going to be located in Taipei. It's a very conscious choice because we speak the language here, we know people here, and it's the kind of great connecting place to a lot of other mini city that we can travel on the weekend. Well, having one central Airbnb, one central home that we are located. And we chose this neighborhood, and of course, this is based on some pre-existing knowledge and research we've done in the city. A neighborhood that's very convenient in terms of public transit. What we didn't know, we had thought that this is kind of like very commercial, very popular shopping district, but we actually got lucky and got a Airbnb in a building that's in a very like tucked away residential street on a very busy neighborhood, so we don't have to worry about noise at all. It's very like neighborhoody feeling, meaning I go down, there is a convenience store There are like 5 to 10 food stands. People are getting groceries. There is like a pharmacy across the street. If we want a coffee, there's a couple of neighborhood coffee shop that is are not the big brands, and everything just feels right. And we are loving our neighborhood so much that there are some days we don't even go any further than our neighborhood. We love our neighborhood in Taipei, and we're able to operate in a very functional way without going really far. And on days where, as you probably have heard in the last episode, I got sick, the days that like we are just feeling a low energy, days that like it's raining and we don't want to go out, your neighborhood is the one that is the most comforting, just like your home. And you're able to do so many things there. And I really stress that is going to make a huge difference for you if you're considering to go on a digital nomad life. Because the last thing you want is to have unexpected situation come up, and one, you're in an inconvenient spot that can't solve anything, or second, you don't even feel very comfortable in that spot, and before you know it, or you find very comfortable in one spot and before you know it you need to move again. It just would be added stress that is not necessary. And also, when you can find your home base when you're abroad, it gives you the space mentally to do some internal reflection and grounding. Preparing for this podcast episode, that's also me reflecting on what has come out for me, what are my learnings. I don't think that I will feel like, well, not that I don't think I knew, like, because before coming to Taipei, we were in Japan for 2 weeks and we were moving hotel every 2 days. I didn't have the mental space at all because every day I'm like worrying about, like, okay, how do we pack our luggage tomorrow? I didn't have the mental space at all to sit down and write anything about my own feeling, my own reflection. Don't put yourself in that shoe, or at least balance it out. Maybe do a period that you are in a one very set space, a good space that you like, and then some period that you're going on for intense travel. You can find your own rhythm. But remember what I say: find your home, find your neighborhood. Sometimes it's even more important than the city or the country that you are in. The last piece that I would mention in terms of factor to consider before you go on or before you decide to go on as a digital nomad is set up a buffer. And I mean that word in the broadest sense of that word in all dimensions of your life and business and career. Set up a buffer in budget, set up a buffer in workload, set up a buffer in choices that you make. So let me go through each of those three. Set up a buffer in budget. That one should be quite intuitive as you hear that. So in my case, before I travel, I had saved up enough to know that if we travel for 4 or 5 months, we'll be okay to cover both our recurring expense in Canada and also travel expense. So I did stretch budget, a comfortable budget, but also a safe budget estimate. And I think like we are now landing kind of somewhere in the middle of that. And this is a topic, this specific thing about money management is also a topic I will expand in either the next episode or the episode after that, because that was also one topic that I surveyed with the audience on Instagram and got some interest as well. Is that I carry some of my insights as an independent filmmaker and in doing my travel budget and my business budget. So we'll go into more like details in a future episode. But for now, what I want to share is that like don't do a version of your budget where it's like, well, we'll figure out how to like, make money once we get there. Maybe we'll take on some odd jobs. Okay, that can work. I've seen people that like gone on a digital nomad life. It's completely like that kind of like mindset. It worked beautifully for the experience they desire. However, if you're mid-career and you are like thinking, okay, I'm there for the lifestyle, I'm not necessarily there to like revamp my career completely, then I would say like don't romanticize too much about making money from off jobs locally. Because again, lots of unexpected things can happen. So really assess where you are in terms of your career and what you're looking for in terms of the digital nomad lifestyle, then set up that nice budget and have some buffer so that if you overspend, you're not so stressed about it. The second piece is a buffer in workload. So very similar thinking carry from budget to workload. I would say like to be specific, even to the extent of like overestimate how much you need to cut back in workload when you're traveling would be actually the key. If you have heard the last episode, I actually take on new projects when I'm here in living the digital nomad life. And that was only possible because my original estimate of my workload was so conservative and I defined such a firm boundary. My husband is doing even better job in that. He had like communicated so well and his workload is so scaled back that he's enjoying the traveling even more than I do. Like there's days that I'm like inside working and he's like, bye, like, I'm gonna go see the show or things like that. That he's only able to do that because he did the budget buffer and the workload buffer. So be very conservative, like how much you can actually work. And then if you have like you realize actually I can work more, then that's your like nice buffer to offer to new projects, right? And right now I definitely have used up my buffer. I am in full capacity until I come back to Canada. So this is usually what happens is when you have a buffer, you're going to use it up. So set up a buffer. The third piece, I think, is both practical and mindset related, is buffer in choice, which is give yourself the flexibility to decide one way or the other. One of the big decisions we make going into the digital nomad life is that we have an estimate of like, okay, by what point we must come back because of life reasons. We have families to take care. We have like other things to take care of that like by such point it would make no sense to not be back. That was like originally going to be like the middle of the year, maybe even June. Then we said to ourselves, okay, but we won't buy the return tickets because we don't want to hold ourselves up to the most like, optimistic outlook of like how long we can stay there. And now, 1 month into the digital nomad life, we have now made a decision when to return. And that date is definitely not we originally like it's definitely within like the reasonable like range that we gave ourselves, but it was not like us again similar to budget and like workload. I guess it didn't land in the most optimistic projection, but it also didn't land in the most like conservative projection. And that's good because we if we had like booked a ticket to return and firmly hold ourselves to a certain date like June 1st or something, if like what ended up happening is actually we want to return earlier and we would be shooting ourselves in the foot because now we have to like cancel a ticket and rebook and all that stuff. So that's one example of when you are going to digital embrace the digital nomad life, embrace as well the flexibility in choices. I'm not saying you cannot do all the planning. In fact, I hope your takeaway from number 3 is that you need to do quite a bit of planning in terms of budget, workload, and a projection of what your options are. But you have that sketch, almost kind of like the first layer of a painting. You have a pencil sketch. Then you're like, well, I'm not going to really like decide what color this painting is yet. But I have all the paint that I can use when I'm there painting, out of there painting, right? You're going to paint one layer at a time. And you thank yourself for bringing those paint, bringing the canvas and did the pencil sketch. But you also thank yourself for not putting, like, finish the painting indoor before you go to see the scenery, because the real magic happens out there. There's my metaphor of the day for you, completely unscripted on the spot. So let me repeat the 3 factors that I want to mention to you, or rather share with you as a trusted friend if you are thinking about the digital nomad life. For number 1, don't expect the digital nomad life is going to solve all your problems, or at least not in a linear way. Second, find your home even when you're on the road. Third, set up a buffer in budget, budgeting buffer in workload, buffer in choices. All in all, I want to share this overarching aha that I had that probably, even without going to the trips, if someone said that to me, I would cognitively understand. But right now, I really feel it viscerally. And in my mind, in my body, I understand what that means. Is that digital nomad lifestyle is really just one of the many lifestyle one can choose to have. It's not the be all and end all. The most important thing is actually the ownership of choices that I can do that if I want to at the moment that is right. It's not so much I must do that. If I don't do that, if I don't become a digital nomad style, somehow it will be like a void in my career and life. Do you find that answer disappointing? I was writing this like inside down and I was like, what would the audience, what would you who are listening to this episode feel when you hear that? I want to share this with you. After experiencing or coming to this realization that digital nomad life is not the beyond and all, I actually find it very comforting because when I look out in the future, I know that now, having done it once, I always have the muscle and the choice to repeat and rinse this lifestyle if I want to. Of course, every time it will be different, maybe a different location, different like setup in terms of time zone. But now that I've done it once, it's like, using that painting metaphor, I've like built a different set of like paints and like brushes that I know that like once I put it in like certain way in a go bag, I can go it like take it and go, and it doesn't matter what like scenery, which nature spot I'm going today to paint. So I want to be very, very honest on this podcast as always to share that with you. If you're experiencing a bottleneck or a critical moment in your life and career now or your creative path, know that the digital nomad life might add to lots of new thoughts and new experience and reflection, but it won't be directly like it's likely not going to be like the only answer and the only antidote to what you're experiencing. As always, what will solve those feeling of being stuck is actually yourself. Regardless of where you are you honest with how you're feeling about your career and life? What are the questions you're asking yourself in terms of examining the options available to you? Are you honest about whether you're in a burnout or not? How are you supporting yourself, not just financially, not just externally, but internally? How are you supporting yourself to get clarity? Those difficult questions don't go away just because you change locale. However, if you are looking for new experience, new stimuli to stretch yourself so that you might be able to confront those questions better, so that you might be able to search some sense of like the beginning of an answer, I highly recommend the Digital Nomad Life. And with the consideration that I share with you, if you have done a pencil sketch of what those look like when you embark on that journey, then you're set up for success. I'll be very excited to hear if you decide that's the path that is right for you. Thank you so much for tuning in again today. And as you probably got a sense, this period of the podcast, this season, let's say spring 2024, is a season where I will be continue to share some reflections, practical tips, and insights for running a creative career, running a creative business while on the road. I'm so thankful the podcast continue to grow and have more and more creatives in our community. If you like what you heard today, please continue to follow the podcast on whichever podcast platform you use or on YouTube. Also, leave us a review or leave a comment or email me about your thoughts. I'm always here listening. I'm here to listen to the signals of what is in our collective wisdom so that I can, in turn, provide more support for creative people like you. As well as you heard, I shared on this podcast episode, I have an e-newsletter where I title it Gentle Signal. It's there for me to share more reflection, sometimes in more long-form format. That's the new format that I've decided in work, about some of the encounters I have in my creative path, and in this period in my life, encounters I have as I work as a digital nomad. If you're interested in signing up, please, I will leave the link in the show notes so that you can sign up for that. Thank you so much for listening. May we all find the lifestyle and the setup that enable us to truly find purpose in our work and our creativity. I will see you next time.